Namaste, everyone. I will be reading today from the Ramana Gita, and thank you for joining. मुझी जी की जय, अनंता जी की जय. Namaste, everyone. I will be reading today from the Ramana Gita, and thank you for joining. मुझी जी की जय, अनंता जी की जय. Namaste, Bhagavad ji. I'm just checking because I had to reduce the sound on YouTube. I will begin my reading in a minute. Thank you so much for joining in. So I'm going to start with an Anjali to Sri Ramana. It's like an invocation for the master. Raman, this is the book, Ramana Gita. So if there's any problem with the sound, do let me know. Anjali to Sri Ramana. On the slopes of Aruna Hill, robbed but by spaces around, sanctifying once more the environs sacred, reigns splendor in human form, dispelling darkness, Ramana called. Among men and others, moving equal, this splendor compact, to sages priceless, luminous, expelling evil in those that seek, mercy bodied, sublime, him they call Maharshi. By his flaming effulgence, the plenitude of tapas puissant, making the world a morsel, he laughs. Yet he shines forth, the Lord Maharshi. Our teacher's teacher, may he destroy our sins. Him the Lord some call the primal being, others see him as being supreme, yet others proclaim him the center in of worlds and spheres. Him who shines forth in all the three. The creature, ego soiled, perceives not, but ever severed from him the infinite, lives aglow the Maharshi, model unto men. Tender is he with gentle smiles, mighty is he with blazing eyes that none can meet, vast with a heart which delighteth in all, in movement deep from whence sprung. Is he other Shankar, prince of perceptors? Is he Kumara, Shankar's offspring? Is he the self boy, Kundina born? Or else Lord Shambhu with Shakti inborn? Thus begins thy life with many a sigh, and leaves the learned guessing, O silent one. But ever in our hearts thou joyest to dwell, with certitude, O Ramana, teacher of teachers. Namaste, Rashmi. Thank you for coming and joining. Bhagavati ji says that she has to leave. That's fine. Love it. Thank you for joining as long as you could. So here is where it's the Anjali to Sri Ramana. This offering of hymned praise is Aupachanda's meter set, made in worship rest at Maharshi's lotus feet. The merit here is devotion enduring, fulfilling the fullest desire of resonant with but Ramana's name, pleasing alike to ear and heart. Ornament has it done but singing, the fame of Ramana, king of Maunis, vested with such triple grace, shines the hymn with ever fresh eyes. To dwell upon Ramana's lotus feet is delight for heart and soul, for savoring sweetness would anyone always demand. This offering of reverent praise is made by Bhakta Kapali of Bharadvaja line, disciple of Kavya Kanta sage, the servant of him who served at Ramana's lotus feet. By Kapali of resplendent speech, severed in full the nectar in the lotus feet of Sri Ramana. And I will begin the Gita, the first chapter. I will be reading a little of the Sanskrit and then the English translation of the meaning of that verse. Maharshim Ramanam Natva Kartikeyam Naraktim Matam Tasya Prasannena Nampa Nibhadyate. Bowing down to Rama, great seer, scanned in human form, his views are compiled in this lucid work. Now, this is the foremost verse of the work which we would like to comment upon. By invoking the Maharshi at the beginning of the work, the author utters to his master the word of salutation. By this, the auspicious rite approved by the elite has been performed. Bowing down to Kartikeya, Subramanya, who has taken the guise of man as the great seer of truth, the Maharshi, the Bhagwan, famous by his appellation Ramana, his views are compiled by me in brackets in the form of a simple, straightforward work, the word and sense of which are easy to comprehend. He, the author of Kritika stars, Kartikeya, the eternal youth, Skanda has a form similar to that of man. When it is said that Maharshi is Skanda, wearing a human form, the statement is made that the Maharshi is an avatara of Skanda. Here one questions how the Maharshi is said to be an avatara of Kumara. Is it a declaration of the devoted one, the great poet blessed by the Master, the Maharshi, extolling his glory by claiming his avatarhood? Is salutation done here because he is an avatara or because he is the Master? Salutation is to the Master, but avatara is the Master's essential form. So he is not mentioned as avatara because he is the Master. Neither is he acclaimed as the Master because of his avatarhood. Then the question is, under what authority is this avatarhood assumed? True about the Maharshi, some amongst the ordinary folk think that he is a saint, harmless, one of those who have tortured their head and almost discarded their clothes. But this is not acceptable to men of faith or cultured mind. Among some say that he is doubtless a saint, completely detached, a sannyasi. Others hold that he is to be counted as the foremost of yoga, in that he is a siddha, an accomplished person, excellent among the well-poised, a realized soul. A few say he is our master. Blessed are we to claim him as our master. Even amongst them, only two or three feel that he is Brahma, himself the immortal amongst the mortals, who has descended here to demonstrate that one great release while in life is life and be immortal. It is not at all possible to reason for such a popular belief. In all these cases, the authority is some kind of inmost faith or perception. It is not possible to spout a yogi or a siddha by any outward signs. In comprehending a yogi, etc., only after the birth of faith, reasoning comes in play in the believing person. Such reasoning fosters the favorable opinion and becomes an aid to increase the faith. Therefore, it is proper to say whatever reasons the yogihood of a person is deduced, in the same way the avatar also is believed. Our master, an adept in measuring his words and statements, is counted as the first and foremost amongst the scholar disciples of the Maharshi. From early age, he was bent upon the task of actually experiencing the truth of mantra, tantra, and the gods as imparted by the Veda and other spiritual texts. He took refuge in Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi as his master. Prompted by a special vision, he praised his master in the form of 8 verses. Famous is this lot of 8 verses, Ramanashtaka, based on the vision of the Muni, in which he saw an effulgence from the sky descending into Maharshi Ramana. There it is mentioned, 2 or 3 are aware of thee as God Goa, seated on the lap of Gita, the daughter of the mountain. Or else Vyasa and others of yore who knew the principle of avatarhood, seeing a special manifestation in some particular person or comprehending the presence of the divine part in him, had stated him as an avatara. In this way, they mentioned about Arjuna as an amsha, portion of Indra, Vasudeva as Vishnu himself descended, and others like Yudhishthira as amsa of other gods. In later times, people have acclaimed Adi Shankara as the Amsha of Shiva. Amsha as in a portion, a part. The other Acharyas are said to be Amsha, Sesha, Hanuman, etc. Likewise, the Shaivites sing about Tirunavukarasu as an Amsha of Ganapati and about Tirugnana Sambandha as an Amsha of Skanda. Likewise, let those who know the principle of avatarhood, as Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi is an avatar of Skanda. As Kartikeya and Mahasena are mentioned in the enumeration of the names of Skanda as Kartikeya, Skanda is meant here. The Chandogya Upanishad makes no differentiation between Skanda and Sanatkumara. The Puranas say that they are different. This is not an occasion to determine and fix the true form of Kumara, or is it to discuss of avatarhood. So we are not engaging ourselves in getting at the truth by examining the statements of the scriptures and the words of the Purana. This is enough. As on the Upanishadic view, our master's contention is that the Maharshi is Skanda. That is how we have explained everywhere. It is said that the Maharshi's views are compiled. It has to be understood that these are based on the experience of Maharshi. No new or a modern religion is intended to be propagated. In this work, the answers given by the Maharshi to the questioners, according to the perception of truth based on his own experience, express his views. In the winter 29th of the 12th month of the year 1913 of the Christian era, this second verse has been read with the third for arriving at the meaning. Years are counted from the birth of the Son of God, Christ, Rama, Bhumi, Nanda, and Dha are symbols denoting the numbers 1, 9, and 1 respectively. It means during winter in the 12th month of 1913 in December on January day. That is the second verse. The third verse, Upavisteshu sarvesu sisyesu niyatama niyatamasu niyatatmasu bhagavantam oham soham apratam niryaptastaye. When all the disciples with self-control were seated, I questioned the seer, Bhagwan, to make sure of certain concepts. The disciples were not freely roaming about. They exercised self-control and were disciplined. The meaning is, when such disciples worthy of the Master's grace were seated, I, who had taken upon myself the role of questioner, asked the questions detailing the ensuing verses. For acquiring the knowledge, sure and certain that destroy all doubts. Or the statement, so come, I, that one, in bracket. The word I, qualified as the third person, that, in quotes, asked, denotes the remembrance of the author, in brackets, of the occasion of questioning that came to him at the time of compiling the work. Therefore, it is evident that the time when questions in the first chapter were asked is different from the time of composition of the work. This will be clear in later chapters. It is said that the poet was the only one who questioned while so many disciples were seated, desiring to know. It is expected that by this doubts of other disciples also would be dispelled. By this we deduce the universally accepted provenance of the questioner. Also in the first verse, when the poet says, after salutation to the master, his views are compiled, words by me, in quotes, for inference. The word in the first person not used like I compile or it is compiled by me, out of modesty, out of devotion to the master. He says, I asked. This indicates the heartfelt importance given to the author of the work by the other disciples. In this work of questions and answers, the time for questioning is mentioned at appropriate places. This is a pointer to the poet's application for historical facts. In counting time, years, months, and days are given according to the Christian calendar. No blame can be attached by this that the traditional calendars like Samvat, etc., have been bypassed. Nowadays, the Christianity is universally followed, like by those who deal in mundane things and is supported by knowledgeable people. Now, six questions are posed in five verses, beginning with Satya Vivekana and ending in Abhigachati Vana Va. The fourth verse, Satya Satya Vivekena Muchyate Kevalena Kim Uttaho Bandha Ayapyate Sadhanantaram. In this one, in one is one released by having discrimination between truth and untruth, or does any other means exist for the removal of truth? Is the self, consciousness, the infinite, knowledge, Brahman. Is all that pertain to the self, inert matter, the transient body or the world. The principles of these two pertaining to the self and the non-self have to be differentiated, pondered over, and understood. This is meant by the word discrimination. Is such a discrimination between truth and untruth alone sufficient, without any other means to get a discerning man released from bondage? The bondage is a fact of experience in daily dealings of all, when the body and the self seen separately. For the removal, abandonment, total release of the bondage, is there any other means, a means different from a sound knowledge arising out of the revelation of the essential principles? Is not this a simple question to import? The discrimination between truth and untruth has no different meaning from the discerning knowledge between permanent and transitory things. And this is well known as included in the four means. Then how is it that a doubt is raised about its utility as a means? Not so. Some among the knowers of the Shastras consider knowledge as a special intellectual activity arising out of the discrimination of the essential principles, which is which is truth, world is falsity. Though they say that the real nature of knowledge is direct experience, not intuition arrived at intellect, even so, hold that this does not require anything other than a conviction born out of an investigation in the essential principles, as the essential form of the self is the truth, substance, and it is always there, ready at hand. Relying on the words of these protagonists, innocent folk, desirous of knowledge, stumble and fall like the blind led by the blind. These people that as the nature of the self is always pure, and as the world is of bondage in the falsity of the world, so release is only a mental conclusion. In order to demolish of such unlearned ones, there in the question, the words use discrimination between truth and not between permanent and transitory. This is with a view to save one from the error of thinking that the of the four means is meant here. Those who think that discrimination between truth and untruth, as above, is alone knowledge, a direct means to getting release only through Shastras, is obtained knowledge as a means of release. There arises the second question proceeding from the first question, Kimala, etc. Just to speak a little bit about the paragraph read, I guess we have all heard our masters speak about um, the Neo Advaitins, as they are called, I don't know, that everything is proven as unreal unless direct experience, just a conviction that everything is unreal is not enough. So, this is what I have read in this chapter and have understood from this chapter. So, this little problem while seeking, sometimes which we might get entangled in, mind believes that everything is unreal, but you still feel separate, has, I guess, always been there and should not be so much of a threat. But if you see it, I guess you can look at it and get through it, and with discernment and inquiry, and work to find ultimate freedom. The fifth verse, Kimalam Shastrachachaiva Jijnas Jinasunam Vimuktaye Yata Yata Gurupadesham Kim Upasam Apekshate. For the release of those desiring to know, is discussion on the Shastras alone enough? Does it require practice according to percept of the master? In the case of those desiring to know the truth, is Shastric, discussion alone enough for obtaining release? Will inquiry into the stars suffice by which one gets the discriminatory knowledge of the essential principle that Brahman is truth, is false, etc., and one understands the nature of self to be always pure, awakened, and free? Or is a tool like practice does not swerve from the percept of the master in need to be taught? Forgetting these, does Shastric inquiry practice? Some hold that knowledge alone is the means for release, and that arises only out into the Shastras, and need any practice, they say. The stage in Vedanta begins with scholar, intellectual, etc., and ends with the person who has a perceptor. The person who has a perceptor knows. Therefore, a doubt has arisen where the practice has to be done necessarily following the words of the master, or Shastric inquiry would suffice for release. As an appendix to the previous two questions, the third question is asked in the verse Sthita Pragna etc. Sixth verse, Stitaprajna, Stitapragnam, Atmanam Kim Samar, Samartate, Viditva Paripurnatvam, Gnanasya Parater Uta. One established in consciousness conclude that he is established in consciousness, knowing the or the seizing of knowledge. If the discrimination between truth and untruth alone is knowledge, it will give release, that too born out of inquiry into Shastras, without the need for practice, then the one who has got the discriminatory knowledge from the Shastras will turn out to be the knower of the self. How does such a knower of the self, the person known as Sthita Prajna, come to the conclusion that he knows? The person has his consciousness, remembrance poised in the self firmly without applying it to the senses, and he is steadfast in his consciousness, Sthita Prajna. Does he conclude that he is firmly established in consciousness by knowing the fullness of things or the seeing knowledge? Does he understand by realizing that he alone has become all this? Does such an understanding make him conclude that he has become a knower of the self? Or does he turn away from from all that he known, internal or external? Does he conclude that he has become the knower of the self because he is at peace, emptied of all knowledge relating to sensory objects? Thus, the question is asked with alternate suggestions as to how our concludes that his self has awakened. Now, in the half verse, the fourth question is asked, which is how other minds conclude that one is a knower. The seventh verse, Naminam Kena Lingena Gnatum Sakshyanti Kovida. By what sign will the experts be able to know that one is a knower? How are the experts able to know the knower of the self? By what sign or mark do they recognize him? Though the sign of knowledge are present in the knower of it cannot be recognized in the same way by the scholar person because of difference in capacity of special culture. Therefore, the word used is efforts. The later half of this verse contains the fifth question. Gnana yaiva samadhi kim kamaya puta kale. Is samadhi only for knowledge? Does it tend to fulfill desires as well? Samadhi is a state in which all is well held. This state is acquired by diverting the mental activity from all sorts of things and remaining in one pointed attention. Is this state capable of giving only the knowledge that is a means for moksha, or does it also tend to fulfill the desires? By samadhi, by quiescence, reconciliation of the inner sense, knowledge is acquired, which they say is the direct means. Is that samadhi useful for the acquisition of the supreme purpose of life only, or does it become a means for satisfying the desire, the lower purpose of life? Whether the fulfillment of desire will necessarily happen to a yogi is the sixth question. Kamena yogam abhyasa sthit- sthita prajna bhavetvari sakamo mushya safalyam adigachati vanava. If one starts yoga with a desire and then becomes established in consciousness, will that desire get fulfilled in his case or not? And as initially, with some desire practices yoga, follows the means that Brahma becomes Sthita, a Muni who has shaken off all desires and cast away all sin, a knower of the self. In the case of such a yogi, will the desire, the mental wish into yoga still take root or will it not fructify? We hear that in the case of Sthita Prajna Mauni, all desires emerge and end. Here is the doubt. Though a person is unwilling to do yoga to accomplish his particular desire, he thinks that yoga is the only means. He takes it so seriously as a sadhana and by dint of practice advances ahead and becomes yoga. All the desires in him are put to an end. Then what is the fate of that which was instrumental in starting the yoga for him? Thus I thought of the six questions and put them at the same time. Evam mama guru prashnan akarnya karunanidhi abravit samasyachari ramano bhagwan rishi Maharshi. These are the questions, my master treasure, house of compassion, spoke dispelling all doubts. My master Sri Ramana, the treasure house of compassion, Bhagwan, the seer, had heard the six questions posed by gave the following answers in the same order the questions were put. Not that here the first question was the answer, then the second question was posed, and after getting the answer, the third question, and similarly the other questions were submitted. Simultaneously, all the six questions in that order were put as a whole. Their answers also were given in the same order. Now the answer is supplied for the first question. The 10th verse. Mochaye sakalam bandhan athaiva kevalam satya satya vivekam tu prahur vairagya sadhanam. The poise in the self alone will release all bondages. However, discrimination between truth and they say is a means for getting detachment. A firm stand, a poise in the self, the ultimate source of I, the natural form of the truth substance. This alone, without the assistance of any other means, is capable of loosening and releasing all the bonds in the form of the knot of ignorance. The word alone is used to denote that no other means exists to loosen the bond of the knot of all kinds of ignorance. If so, what is the use discrimination between the truth and untruth got by Shastric inquiry? He replies, discrimination between the truth and untruth is to be aimed at and felt as a means of detachment. He teaches the discrimination between truth and untruth as a purpose, as a means for detachment. The word tu, however, is used to convey that we should not cast a doubt about the utility of discrimination between truth and untruth, assuming that detachment to things disliked earth to attachment to things liked. They say that this they say that the said spiritual practice, which is a means for getting the knowledge of the self, can become a means to cultivate detachment in things other than the self. Though here the discrimination between truth and untruth is not stated as a direct means towards the knowledge of the self, it is used specially as a graded step because it is helpful for entrance into the spiritual practice, which is a direct means. There is nothing to be accomplished by detachment for a mature person who is naturally attached to the Supreme Self. That is why we have to understand the utility of detachment, as it may at times become a means for spiritual practice. Just a discrimination between truth and untruth becomes a means for detachment. Likewise, detachment also becomes a means for spiritual practice. For those who get an entry into the spiritual practice, which is a means of getting knowledge, the detachment born out of discrimination between truth and untruth becomes indispensable and so also useful. For those who resort to practice out of love for the Supreme Self, whose is served by discrimination between truth and untruth, and the detachment arising out of it is born of a disgust for the world. Because in attachment to the Supreme Self, the detachment to other to things other than that is implied. So to say, so say the learned to the divine is detached to the non-divine. When it is said here that the discrimination between truth and untruth is the means to detachment alone, what is the hidden implication? Though the world is real, just to produce detachment to be false, just as in the world a mother tells a child unwilling to eat, "Dear, eat quickly, the thief will now come to catch you, the morsel is little, come on, swallow." And thus, by feeds the child and accomplishes her purpose. So also here, when the world is real, to call it false is blame because it results in a desire to know the true form of the self, which is the supreme purpose of life. If some doubt raises in your mind, don't think like that, says the next verse. The 11th verse. सतिष्ठति गम्भीरो ज्ञानी केवलम् आत्मनि न सत्यं सिन्धति विषयं न वा स्वया स्वस्य tadatam. The Gnani takes his stand in his self at all times, absolute, fearless. He does not think of the universe as unreal, nor does he see it as different from himself. The Gnani, the knower of the self, all alone is absolute solitude, stations himself without any intermission, at all times fearless and resolute in the Supreme Self, which is his original form. To one poised in the self at all times, resoluteness and absoluteness get accomplished naturally. He should not think the universe as unreal. He does not think it to be different, neither does he consider himself different from the universe. He does not think that this world is unreal and exists separately from this world of the one who is well established in the true form of the self at all times, associated nature of all the world and all the beings with the form of the self is evident. Do not the scripture say that all this belongs to the self? Then, to the one poised in the self, the vision of the world is not different in nature to the form of the self, becomes natural. How does the reality or the unreality of the world become object of his contemplation as nothing exists other than the form of the self? The world that is considered as non self by a person who does not know the self is considered as not different from the self by a person who knows the self. As there cannot be existence, and as the form of the self is the form of fullness and indivisibility, where is the place for non existence or for its contemplation in a person whose natural state is endowed with poise in the self? Or how the sage who sees the cause of the world as the supreme form of the self without a second, as gold in the ornaments, can see the separate existence of unreality. Me? Well, the concept whether the world exists or does not exist is not possible to one who sleeps, as he cannot grasp things in the state. Just as to a man who is awake about one thing, one point, at that time he has no concept of existence or non existence of other things. Likewise, as the person established in the form of the self is aloof to the universe, it can be said that the world is false. One, you should not fall into this error. It is said that nor does, in quotes, nor does he see it different from himself. Fits in with the sayings of the scriptures, all is the self. All this belongs to the self. That is truth, he is the self. Self in all beings. In In Saddarshana also it is taught thus. The universe exists for the one who does not know and for the one who knows. To the former, the world as seen is alone the truth. To the latter, the truth shines as one, complete, formless, and the basis of all that is seen. So, we have come to the end of the 11th verse, and Bhagwan has been answering the four questions that went. I will continue from the 12th verse in next meeting, which would be next Friday, 7 p.m. I will be reading from Ramana chapter by chapter. Joy to read to everyone. Thank you so much for watching this. Moji ji ki jai, Ananta ji ki jai, ki jai, Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi ki. Thank you.